What happens when a billionaire who has never had to share anything in his life suddenly has to share a tiny two-bedroom apartment with a stubborn, sharp-tongued woman who can't stand him? At first, they wanted to kill each other, but fate had other plans. Their story is proof that sometimes the person you fight with the most might just be the one your heart has been searching for all along. Watch till the end, because nothing about their love story was predictable. Welcome back to African Love Chronicles, your favorite place for stories soaked in passion and soul-deep romance. If you're new here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment to tell us your favorite part of the story. Your support keeps these love tales flowing strong. Special thanks to our channel members and those who show their love and support through super thanks. We love and appreciate you. Now, grab your popcorn and let's dive in. The first thing anyone noticed about Adrian Okonkwo was his presence. He didn't walk into rooms, he commanded them. At 32, he'd built an empire that made grown men nervous and competitors sleepless. Tech real estate. Investments that turned millions into billions. His face graced magazine covers with headlines like "The King of Innovation" and "Africa's Youngest Billionaire." But if you asked Adrian, success was simply what happened when you refused to accept anything less than perfection. He lived in a sprawling penthouse that overlooked the city like a throne room, wore suits that cost more than most people's cars, and had a reputation for being as cold as he was brilliant. Women threw themselves at him. Men wanted to be him. And Adrian? He wanted none of it. He wanted control, order, a life that bent to his will. That life shattered on a Tuesday. The call came at 2:47 a.m. His lawyer's voice was tight with panic. "Adrian, we have a problem. A big one." By sunrise, Adrian understood the magnitude of his disaster. His business partner, his trusted friend of 10 years, had embezzled funds, framed Adrian for tax evasion, and disappeared with enough evidence to bury him. Overnight, his accounts were frozen. His assets seized. His penthouse, along with everything he owned, was locked down pending investigation. Everything except one property. A modest two-bedroom apartment in a middle-class neighborhood that he'd bought years ago as an investment and forgotten about. The lawyer's voice had been grim. "It's all you have access to right now. I'm working on the rest, but this could take months." Adrian had laughed. Actually laughed. Because the universe had to be joking. But it wasn't. Zara Adelik believed in three things: hard work, her grandmother's prayers, and never depending on a man for anything. At 28, she'd fought for everything she had. Raised by her grandmother after her parents died in a car accident when she was 12, Zara learned early that life didn't hand out favors. You took what you wanted, or you went without. She'd put herself through university working double shifts, graduated top of her class, and now ran a small but thriving event planning business. She was sharp-tongued, quick-witted, and had a smile that could disarm anyone, though she rarely used it on people she didn't trust. Which was most people. Especially men in expensive suits who thought their money could buy anything. Zara had rented the two-bedroom apartment 6 months ago. It was perfect. Affordable, close to her office, with enough space for her to breathe. The landlord had been vague about ownership, something about a property management company. But the lease was legal, the deposit paid, and Zara had made it home. She'd painted the living room walls a soft yellow, hung curtains she'd sewn herself, and filled the space with plants that she talked to every morning. It was hers. The first place that truly felt like hers. Until the morning a strange man walked through her front door with a key. Zara was in the kitchen, humming along to a song on the radio, wearing an oversized t-shirt and shorts, her natural hair piled into a messy bun. She was pouring her second cup of coffee when she heard it, the distinct sound of a key turning in her lock. Her heart jumped. She grabbed the first thing she could reach, a frying pan, and crept toward the door. It swung open. A man stepped inside, pulling a single leather suitcase behind him. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders, dark skin, and the kind of face that belonged on billboards. Sharp jawline. Intense eyes. The kind of handsome that was almost offensive. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, dark trousers, and an expression of extreme irritation. He didn't see her at first. He was too busy looking around the apartment with obvious disdain, his lip curling slightly as he took in her yellow walls and potted plants. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. That's when Zara stepped forward, frying pan raised. "Who the hell are you, and why are you in my apartment?" Adrian's head snapped toward her. For a moment, they just stared at each other. His eyes traveled from the pan in her hands to her face, then down to her bare legs and back up again. Something flickered in his expression, surprise maybe, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by cold annoyance. Your apartment? His voice was deep, smooth, and dripping with condescension. I don't know who you are, but you're mistaken. This is my property. Zara's grip on the pan tightened. Your property? I've been living here for 6 months. I have a lease. And I have the deed. Adrian reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document, which he held up like it was a weapon. This apartment belongs to me. So whatever scam you're running. Scam? Zara's voice rose. I'm not running anything. I paid rent, I have a contract, and I don't know who you think you are, but you need to leave. Now. Adrian's jaw clenched. He looked like he was physically restraining himself from saying something he'd regret. Call your landlord. Right now. Fine. Zara stormed to the kitchen counter, grabbed her phone, and dialed. The number went straight to voicemail. She tried again. Same result. Her stomach twisted. Adrian watched her with his arms crossed, one eyebrow raised in a way that made her want to throw the frying pan at his smug face. Let me guess, he said slowly. Not answering? Zara didn't respond. She was already scrolling through her emails, her heart sinking with each passing second. The property management company that had handled her lease, the address listed didn't exist. The phone number was disconnected. Oh God. It's a scam, isn't it? Adrian's voice was softer now, but somehow that made it worse. Like he pitied her. Zara's throat tightened. She refused to cry in front of this stranger. Refused to give him the satisfaction. I paid 6 months up front. I have receipts. Receipts for an illegal sublet on property you had no right to occupy. Adrian ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking exhausted. Look, I don't have time for this. I'll give you 24 hours to find somewhere else. 24 hours? Zara's voice cracked despite her best efforts. I don't have anywhere else to go. Not my problem. Not your. She took a step toward him, fury overriding fear. You walk into my home. My home. With your entitled attitude and your expensive suitcase. And you think you can just throw me out? Adrian's eyes narrowed. I don't think. I know. This is my property, and I have every legal right. Legal right doesn't make you less of an asshole. The words hung in the air between them. Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Something dangerous. I've been called worse by better people, he said quietly. You have until tomorrow morning. He walked past her, heading toward the hallway. Zara's hands trembled as she watched him open the door to what had been her bedroom, the master bedroom, and walk inside like he owned the place. Which technically he did. Where am I supposed to sleep? She called after him. Not my problem, came his voice from inside the room. Zara stood in the middle of the living room, the frying pan still in her hand, and felt the unfairness of it all crash over her. 6 months of rent. Her security deposit. All her savings, gone to a scammer she'd never find. And now this arrogant, cold-hearted man was taking the only home she had. She looked around at her yellow walls, her plants, her carefully arranged life, and made a decision. She wasn't leaving. Adrian lay on the bed, his bed, in his apartment, and stared at the ceiling. The mattress was decent, at least. The room was smaller than his closet had been in the penthouse, but it would do. It had to do. He could hear her moving around outside. The soft pad of bare feet, the clink of dishes. She was still there. Still in his space. Still being stubborn about something that was legally, factually, undeniably not her concern. Adrian closed his eyes and tried to ignore the headache building behind his temples. The last 48 hours felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. From billionaire to basically homeless. From untouchable to under investigation. And now he was stuck in a mediocre apartment with a woman who looked at him like he was the devil himself. He should call the police. Have her removed. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the look on her face when she realized she'd been scammed. That flash of genuine devastation before she'd covered it with anger. Or maybe he was just too tired to fight another battle today. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow he'd deal with her. But tomorrow had other plans. Zara woke up on the couch with a crick in her neck and murder in her heart. She'd spent the night tossing and turning on cushions that weren't meant for sleeping, listening to Mr. Billionaire snore softly in her bedroom. Every creak of the bed frame had made her grind her teeth. Every peaceful breath he took had felt like a personal insult. When morning light filtered through the windows, Zara sat up and made a decision. If he thought she was leaving without a fight, he had another thing coming. She showered in the bathroom, her bathroom, taking extra time to use all the hot water. Then she made breakfast in the kitchen, deliberately clanging pots and pans. When Adrian finally emerged from the bedroom, looking unfairly handsome despite clearly not sleeping well, Zara was sitting at the small dining table with coffee, toast, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning," she said sweetly. Adrian stopped mid-step. He looked at her, then at the breakfast, then back at her. "What are you still doing here?" "Living my life." "Coffee." "I told you. And I'm telling you that I'm not leaving." Zara took a deliberate sip of coffee. "I paid for this place. I was scammed, yes, but that's not my fault. And I'm certainly not going to be homeless because you decided to show up out of nowhere." Adrian's jaw worked. "You can't just." "Can I?" Zara leaned back in her chair. "Here's the situation. You say this is your apartment. I believe you. But I also have a legal lease, receipts, and proof that I've been living here for 6 months. If you try to throw me out, I'll fight you. And while you're fighting me, you'll be dealing with lawyers, courts, and a lot of public attention. Do you really want that right now?" Adrian's eyes narrowed. She could see him processing, calculating. For a man who was used to winning, she'd just put him in checkmate. "How do you know I'm trying to avoid attention?" His voice was careful now. "Because men like you don't move into places like this unless they're running from something." Zara met his gaze steadily. "So here's my proposal. We share the apartment." "Absolutely not. You take the master bedroom. I'll take the second room. We split the bills, stay out of each other's way, and both have a roof over our heads. When you're ready to move back to wherever you came from, I'll take over the lease properly." Adrian stared at her like she'd suggested they fly to the moon. "You're insane." "I'm practical." Zara stood up, smoothing down her dress. "Think about it. I'm going to work. And for the record, I used all the hot water." She grabbed her bag and walked past him, fighting the urge to smile at his stunned expression. "You can't be serious." Adrian called after her. Zara paused at the door, looking back over her shoulder. "I'm completely serious. Welcome home, roommate." She left him standing there, and if she'd looked back, she would have seen something unexpected cross his face. Respect. By the time Zara returned that evening, exhausted from managing a chaotic corporate event, she half expected to find the locks changed and her belongings on the street. Instead, she found Adrian sitting at the dining table with his laptop, papers spread everywhere, and an expression of intense concentration. He'd changed into casual clothes, a simple black t-shirt and jeans, and somehow looked even more intimidating without the formal wear. He glanced up when she entered. "We need to talk." "Hello to you too." Zara dropped her bag and headed for the kitchen. "I'm making dinner. Want some?" "Did you hear what I said?" "I heard you." Zara pulled out ingredients from the fridge. "But I've been dealing with bridezillas all day, and I'm starving. So unless you're planning to physically throw me out, which I don't recommend, we can talk while I cook." She heard his chair scrape back. Footsteps. Then he was leaning against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, watching her with an unreadable expression. "I spoke to my lawyer," Adrian said finally. Zara's hands paused on the vegetables she was chopping. And legally, this situation is a mess. You do have a lease, even if it's fraudulent. Evicting you could take months and would draw attention I can't afford right now." He paused. "So I'm agreeing to your proposal. Temporarily." Zara looked up, genuinely surprised. Really? But with conditions." Adrian's tone was all business now. "We split utilities 50-50. We establish a cleaning schedule. We stay out of each other's personal lives. And the moment my legal situation is resolved, you're gone." "Fair enough." Zara resumed chopping, hiding her relief. "I have conditions too." "Of course you do. No bringing random women here. I don't want to hear anything through the walls." She felt her cheeks heat, but kept her voice steady. "Respect my work schedule. I sometimes work late or have early mornings. And stay out of my business too." Adrian was quiet for a moment. When Zara glanced at him, he was looking at her with something that might have been amusement. "Deal," he said. They shook hands. His palm was warm, his grip firm, and Zara tried to ignore the small jolt that went through her at the contact. "Now," Adrian said, not moving. "What are you cooking?" "Jollof rice and chicken." "Why?" "Because it smells incredible, and I haven't eaten all day." Zara blinked. Was that almost human? She shrugged. "Set the table." To her surprise, he did. They ate in awkward silence, the only sound the clink of cutlery and the distant noise of traffic outside. Zara kept stealing glances at him, trying to reconcile this quiet, tired-looking man with the arrogant asshole who'd invaded her home that morning. "This is really good," Adrian said suddenly. "Thanks. My grandmother's recipe. She taught you to cook?" "She taught me everything." Zara felt the familiar ache in her chest. "She passed 2 years ago." "I'm sorry." The words were simple, but something in his tone made them sound genuine. Zara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. They finished eating. Adrian insisted on washing dishes. Zara didn't argue. As she headed to the second bedroom, her new room, she paused. "Adrian." He looked up from the sink, soap suds on his hands. "Thanks for agreeing to this." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Don't make me regret it." "Wouldn't dream of it, roommate." That night, lying in the smaller bedroom, Zara stared at the ceiling and wondered what she'd gotten herself into. In the room next door, Adrian did the same. Neither of them could have predicted what was coming. 3 weeks later. If someone had told Zara a month ago that she'd be living with a billionaire in hiding, she would have laughed them out of the room. But here she was, navigating the strange new normal of cohabitation with Adrian Okonkwo. They'd fallen into an unexpected routine. Adrian worked from the dining table, constantly on calls with lawyers and former colleagues, trying to salvage his empire. Zara came and went with her events, often returning late and exhausted. They communicated through brief exchanges and sticky notes left on the fridge. "Out of milk. Your turn to buy." "Z. Bought milk. Also, your music is too loud in the mornings." Your phone calls keep me up at night. Get better lawyers." "Z. Working on it. Your client yelled at you today. I heard through the door." "Sorry." It was functional. Civil. Almost comfortable. But comfortable didn't last. The change started on a Friday night. Zara had just finished a wedding that ran 4 hours over schedule. Everything that could go wrong had gone wrong. The flowers arrived dead, the caterer forgot the appetizers, and the groom's mother spent the entire evening sobbing about her baby leaving her. Zara had smiled through it all, fixed what she could, and held herself together until she finally made it home at 2 a.m. She opened the apartment door as quietly as possible, not wanting to wake Adrian. But the lights were on in the living room. Adrian was pacing, phone pressed to his ear, his voice low and intense. "I don't care what it takes, David. Find him. He has my money and my reputation, and I want both back." Zara tried to slip past unnoticed, but her heel caught on the edge of the rug. She stumbled, catching herself on the wall with a curse. Adrian's head whipped toward her. His eyes were red-rimmed, face drawn with exhaustion and stress. For a moment, they just looked at each other. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, then hung up. "Sorry," Zara mumbled. "Didn't mean to interrupt." "You're fine." Adrian set his phone down and seemed to really see her for the first time. "You look terrible." "Wow. Thanks." Just what every woman wants to hear at 2 a.m. Despite everything, his lips twitched. Almost a smile. "I meant you look exhausted." "Wedding from hell." Zara kicked off her heels with a groan of relief. "I need wine and a lobotomy." "Not necessarily in that order." "I have wine." She looked at him, surprised. "Really? I bought a bottle this afternoon. Figured I deserved it after my 6th lawyer told me this could take a year to resolve." Adrian headed to the kitchen. "Want some?" Zara should have said no. Should have gone to bed, maintained the careful distance they'd established. But she was tired and frustrated, and the thought of being alone with her thoughts right now was unbearable. "Sure." They ended up on the couch, each with a glass of red wine, the TV playing some late-night talk show neither of them was really watching. The silence between them had shifted from awkward to something else. Something easier. "Can I ask you something?" Zara said finally. "Depends on the question." "What happened?" "I mean, I know you're in some kind of legal trouble, but you don't seem like the type to screw up." Adrian was quiet for so long that Zara thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "I trusted the wrong person." "Your business partner?" "My best friend." Adrian's voice was flat. 10 years. I trusted him with everything. Access to accounts, signing authority, my reputation. And he used all of it to rob me blind and frame me for his crimes. God. That's... Zara trailed off. "I'm sorry. Don't be. It's my fault for not seeing it coming. I built an empire on reading people, on being smarter than everyone else, and I missed the knife aimed at my back." He took a long drink of wine. "Now I'm here, basically broke, fighting to prove my innocence while he's probably on a beach somewhere laughing at me. There was so much pain in his voice. So much betrayal. Zara felt something shift in her chest. "You'll get through this," she said quietly. "You're too stubborn not to." Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression made her breath catch. "You don't even know me. I know enough. You're arrogant and bossy, and you hog the bathroom in the mornings. But you're also smart and determined, and you wash dishes without being asked. So yeah, I think you'll be fine." The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been a genuine smile. "You think I'm arrogant? Oh, incredibly. It's your most consistent trait. And yet you're still here. Well, you make good coffee. That counts for something." They smiled at each other. Actually smiled. And for the first time since this arrangement began, Zara didn't see the rich asshole who'd invaded her home. She saw a man who'd lost everything and was fighting to get it back. A man who was lonely and tired and trying not to show it. "Can I ask you something now?" Adrian said. "Fair's fair. Why events? Why spend your life managing other people's celebrations?" Zara considered her answer carefully. "Because I like making people happy. I like taking someone's dream, their perfect wedding, their company launch, their milestone birthday, and making it real. Even on days when everything goes wrong, there's usually at least one moment that makes it worth it. One look between a bride and groom, one speech that makes everyone cry, one dance that no one wants to end." She paused. "I lost my parents when I was young. My grandmother gave me everything she had to raise me. I think I plan events because I want to create the happy memories I missed out on." Adrian was quiet, his eyes on her face. "That's not what I expected you to say. What did you expect? Something about money or success or proving yourself. Aren't those your reasons?" "Touché." Adrian leaned back, his shoulder almost touching hers. "For what it's worth, you're good at it. I hear you on the phone with clients. You're patient and creative, and you actually care. That's rare." Zara felt warmth spread through her chest. Was that a compliment? Did Adrian Okonkwo just compliment me? Don't get used to it. But he was smiling. A real, genuine smile that transformed his entire face. And Zara realized with a small jolt that he was handsome when he smiled. Not just attractive, everyone could see that, but actually genuinely handsome in a way that made her stomach flip. Dangerous territory, she thought. Very dangerous. She stood up quickly. "I should get to bed. Early morning tomorrow." "Zara." Adrian stood too, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. "Thanks. For listening. Anytime, roommate." She retreated to her room before she could do something stupid. Like notice how good he smelled. Or how his eyes had softened when he looked at her. Or how her heart was racing like she'd just run a marathon. This was just wine and exhaustion, she told herself firmly. That's all. But as she lay in bed, unable to sleep, she couldn't stop replaying their conversation. Couldn't stop thinking about the man on the other side of the wall who was nothing like she'd first thought. And in his room, Adrian stared at the ceiling and tried not to think about how Zara's laugh sounded. Or how she'd looked at him with genuine kindness when everyone else in his life had turned away. Or how for the first time in weeks, he'd felt almost human again. This was temporary, he reminded himself. Just a temporary arrangement until he got his life back. But something told him that nothing about Zara Adelik was temporary. The shower started leaking on a Tuesday morning. Zara discovered it when she stepped out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her body, hair dripping wet, to find water seeping under the door and pooling on the hallway floor. Oh no. No. She grabbed towels, trying to soak up the water, but it kept coming. The leak was getting worse. What's wrong? Adrian appeared in the hallway, dressed for a video call in a button-up shirt and, Zara tried not to notice, pajama pants. The contrast was almost funny. Shower's leaking. I don't know what happened, she gestured helplessly at the growing puddle. Adrian moved past her into the bathroom, and Zara heard him cursing under his breath. The pipe burst. Do you know where the water main is? Under the kitchen sink. He was already moving. 30 seconds later, the water stopped. But the damage was done. The bathroom floor was flooded, water had seeped into the hallway, and when Adrian investigated further, he discovered that the leak had damaged the electrical outlet near the shower. We can't use this bathroom until it's fixed, he said, emerging with wet footprints and an expression of frustration. The wiring needs to be replaced before someone gets electrocuted. Zara's stomach sank. How long will that take? A few days minimum. Maybe a week depending on when we can get a plumber and electrician out here. A week? Zara looked down at herself, still in just a towel, hair full of shampoo that she hadn't been able to rinse out. What are we supposed to do? Adrian ran a hand through his hair, clearly thinking. Then his eyes widened slightly. There's a gym 2 blocks from here. They have shower facilities. You want me to go to a public gym to shower? Unless you have a better idea. Zara didn't. She grabbed her things, threw on clothes over her shampoo sticky hair, and followed Adrian to the gym. They both got day passes, and Zara tried very hard not to think about the fact that Adrian was showering just a few walls away from her. It worked. Barely. But the bathroom problem created a new issue: intimacy. With only one functioning bathroom, the tiny guest toilet that had no shower, they had to coordinate everything. Morning routines became careful dances of, "Are you done yet?" and "I just need 5 minutes." They saw each other in states they'd carefully avoided before. Zara with her bonnet on, face mask applied, Adrian with beard stubble and sleepy eyes, both of them in various states of undress as they navigated the shared space. The walls between them, the careful boundaries they'd maintained, started to crack. It happened in small moments. Adrian making coffee for both of them without asking, remembering that Zara took hers with 2 sugars and a splash of milk. Zara ordering takeout and automatically getting Adrian's favorite dish from the Chinese place down the street. The night Adrian came home to find Zara crying on the couch after a client had berated her for an hour about flower arrangements, and instead of leaving her alone, he sat down and let her vent until she felt better. The morning Zara woke up to find Adrian asleep at the dining table, papers everywhere, and she draped a blanket over his shoulders before heading out. They were becoming friends. Despite everything. Despite the circumstances that had thrown them together. Despite their initial hatred of each other. And then came the night that changed everything. Zara was dreaming about drowning when the scream woke her. She bolted upright, heart pounding, disoriented in the darkness. Another sound, a shout, words she couldn't make out, came from Adrian's room. She was on her feet before she could think, crossing the hallway, pushing open his door. Adrian. The moonlight through the window cast everything in silver. Adrian was in bed, tangled in sheets, thrashing like he was fighting something invisible. His face was contorted with fear or pain or both. "No," he gasped. "No, I trusted you." Nightmare. He was having a nightmare. Zara approached the bed carefully. "Adrian. Hey, wake up." She touched his shoulder, and his eyes flew open. For a moment, he didn't see her. He saw whatever monster was chasing him in sleep. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist with enough force to make her gasp. "Adrian. It's me. It's Zara. You're okay. You're safe." Recognition slowly filtered into his eyes. His grip loosened. "Zara? Yeah. You were having a nightmare." Adrian sat up, breathing hard, sweat glistening on his bare chest. Zara tried very hard to look at his face, and only his face. This was not the time to notice that he slept shirtless or that he had the kind of body that suggested regular gym visits. "I'm sorry," he said roughly. "Did I wake you?" "It's fine. Are you okay?" He laughed, but it sounded broken. "Define okay." Zara sat on the edge of his bed without thinking about it. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." He scrubbed his hands over his face. "Same dream I've been having for weeks. Marcus, my former partner. He's there, laughing while everything I built burns. And I can't stop it. I just have to watch it all disappear. It's not going to disappear. You're fighting back." "Am I?" Adrian's voice cracked slightly. "Because from where I'm sitting, I've lost everything that mattered. My company. My reputation. My life. And I'm stuck in this apartment, pretending I'm not terrified that I'll never get any of it back." The vulnerability in his voice broke something in Zara. She reached out and took his hand without thinking about boundaries or rules, or the fact that he was shirtless, and she was in her pajamas, and they were sitting on his bed in the dark. "You haven't lost everything," she said softly. "You still have yourself. Your intelligence, your determination, your ability to start over. Those are the things that built your empire in the first place. Not your money or your reputation. You." Adrian looked at their joined hands, then up at her face. Something in his expression made her breath catch. "How do you do that?" he asked quietly. "Do what?" "Make me believe things might actually be okay. Maybe because they will be." They were close now. So close that Zara could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from his skin, could count each of his eyelashes if she wanted to. She should leave. Should go back to her room. Should maintain the careful distance they'd established. But she didn't want to. Zara, Adrian said, and her name sounded different in his voice now. Like a prayer. Like a question. Yeah. I think I'm about to do something really stupid. How stupid? This stupid. He leaned in and kissed her. For half a second, Zara's brain short-circuited. This was Adrian. Arrogant, bossy, infuriating Adrian who had invaded her life and turned everything upside down. But his lips were soft, his hand gentle as it came up to cup her cheek, and he kissed her like she was something precious. Something worth savoring. Zara's eyes fluttered closed. She kissed him back. It was slow at first. Tentative. A question being asked and answered. But then Adrian's hand slid into her hair, and Zara's fingers found his bare chest, and the kiss deepened into something hungry. Desperate. Like they'd both been drowning and finally found air. Adrian pulled her closer, and she went willingly, climbing into his lap, her thighs bracketing his hips. His hands spanned her waist, his touch burning through the thin fabric of her tank top. She could feel his heart racing against her palm, matching the frantic rhythm of her own. We shouldn't, Adrian breathed against her mouth, even as his hands tightened on her. Probably not, Zara agreed, then kissed him again. They tumbled back onto the bed in a tangle of limbs and desperate touches. Adrian rolled them over, his body pressing her into the mattress, his weight perfect and overwhelming. Zara arched up into him, her hands exploring the planes of his back, his shoulders everywhere she could reach. Zara, he groaned, and the sound sent heat flooding through her. If you want me to stop. Don't stop, she said. So he didn't. His mouth moved to her neck, finding that sensitive spot just below her ear that made her gasp. His hands slid under her shirt, fingertips tracing patterns on her skin that felt like fire. Every touch was reverent, like he was memorizing her, learning her, claiming her. Zara tugged at his hair, bringing his mouth back to hers. The kiss was deeper now, filthy and perfect. She could feel him against her hip, hard and wanting, and the knowledge that she affected him this way sent a thrill through her. She wanted more. Wanted everything. Wanted to erase the careful boundaries they'd built and see what existed on the other side. But then Adrian pulled back slightly, breathing hard, his forehead resting against hers. We should stop, he said, though his body was telling a different story. Why? Because we're roommates. Because this could complicate things. Because, he kissed her again, brief and desperate. Because if we don't stop now, I won't be able to. Zara's mind was foggy with want, but she understood what he was saying. This was a line they couldn't uncross. Once they went further, everything would change. Okay, she whispered, though every part of her body was screaming in protest. Okay. Adrian rolled off her, both of them breathing hard, staring at the ceiling. The air between them crackled with unspent tension. That was... Zara started. Yeah, we can't do that again. Definitely not. A beat of silence. I should go back to my room, Zara said, but she didn't move. Probably a good idea, Adrian agreed, but his hand found hers in the darkness, fingers intertwining. They lay there for another minute, then two, neither willing to break the connection. Finally, Zara sat up, smoothing down her clothes, very aware of how disheveled she must look, how swollen her lips felt, how her entire body was still humming with desire. Adrian. It was the nightmare, he said quickly. Just emotions running high. Well, forget it happened. Right. Forget it happened. They both knew that was impossible. Zara fled to her room, closed the door, and pressed her back against it, her heart still racing. She touched her lips, still feeling the phantom pressure of his mouth on hers. What had she done? In his room, Adrian lay in bed, his body still taut with want, his mind racing. He could still smell her perfume on his sheets, still feel the ghost of her hands on his skin. What had he done? Neither of them slept that night. The next morning, awkward didn't begin to cover it. Zara emerged from her room at 7 a.m., determined to act normal. Adrian was already in the kitchen, making coffee with intense concentration, like the fate of the world depended on getting the measurements exactly right. Morning, Zara said, her voice too bright. Morning. Adrian didn't look at her. They moved around each other like dancers performing a complicated routine, careful not to touch, not to get too close, not to acknowledge the enormous elephant in the room. Or in this case, the kiss. The kisses. Plural. And everything that came with them. Zara grabbed a mug, reaching past Adrian for the coffee pot. Their arms brushed, and she felt electricity shoot through her. From the way Adrian inhaled sharply, he felt it too. Sorry, she muttered. It's fine. It was not fine. Zara took her coffee to the table, pulled out her laptop, and tried to focus on work. Tried to ignore how Adrian looked in his gray t-shirt and sweatpants. Tried not to remember how those shoulders felt under her hands, how his mouth had moved against hers, how he'd groaned her name. Stop it, she told herself firmly. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. Except it didn't feel like nothing. Adrian sat across from her with his own laptop, and they worked in silence for the next hour. The tension so thick Zara could have cut it with a knife. Every time she glanced up, she caught him looking at her. Every time he shifted in his chair, her eyes tracked the movement. This was torture. Finally, Zara couldn't take it anymore. We need to talk about last night. Adrian's fingers froze on his keyboard. Do we? Yes. We're adults. We can't just pretend nothing happened. He closed his laptop slowly, his expression unreadable. Okay, what do you want to say? That it was a mistake. The words felt like glass in her throat. You were vulnerable, I don't know what I was. But it shouldn't have happened, and it can't happen again. I agree. Good. Zara tried to ignore the tiny stab of disappointment in her chest. So we're on the same page. Same page, Adrian confirmed. But his eyes said something else entirely. They stared at each other across the table, and Zara felt the pull between them like a physical force. It would be so easy to stand up, walk around the table, climb into his lap, and finish what they'd started last night. So dangerously easy. I have to go, Zara said abruptly, grabbing her laptop. Client meeting. You don't have to. Yes, I do. She practically ran out of the apartment, and it wasn't until she was 3 blocks away that she could breathe normally again. This was bad. This was so bad. Because the kiss hadn't felt like a mistake at all. It had felt like the most right thing in the world. 1 week later. They were professionals. Masters of avoidance. Champions of pretending everything was fine. Zara threw herself into work, taking on extra clients, staying out late. Adrian spent 18 hours a day on his laptop, fighting for his company, rebuilding his reputation. They passed each other like ships in the night, communication reduced to sticky notes and brief nods. The bathroom was finally fixed on Saturday. The plumber and electrician came and went, leaving them with a functional shower and no more excuses to avoid each other. But the tension only got worse. Because now, every time Zara showered, she thought about Adrian on the other side of the wall. Every time Adrian heard the water running, he imagined what she looked like under it. Steam and water and skin. It was driving them both insane. The breaking point came on a Friday night. Zara had been at a wedding that ended early when the bride and groom got into a screaming match during the first dance and called the whole thing off. She came home at 9 p.m., emotionally drained and desperately in need of wine. Adrian was on the couch, watching television, something he never did. He looked up when she entered, and his expression softened with concern. You're home early. How was He stopped when he saw her face. What happened? Wedding canceled. Mid-reception. I just watched 2 people who swore they loved each other destroy everything in front of 100 guests. Zara dropped onto the couch beside him, not caring about maintaining distance anymore. I need alcohol. Way ahead of you. Adrian reached behind the couch and produced a bottle of wine. Started drinking an hour ago. My lawyer called. The investigation is going to take at least another 6 months. 6 months. Minimum. They looked at each other, 2 people at the end of their respective ropes, and suddenly Zara started laughing. It wasn't funny, not really, but she couldn't stop. Adrian joined her, and soon they were both doubled over, laughing at the absolute absurdity of their lives. We're a mess, Zara gasped. Completely, Adrian agreed. They drank wine straight from the bottle, passing it back and forth, and somewhere around the halfway point, the laughter faded into something else. Something heavier. Can I ask you something? Adrian said, his voice slightly rough from alcohol and exhaustion. Sure. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd met under different circumstances? If I hadn't been the guy invading your apartment, if you hadn't been the woman squatting in mine? Zara's heart kicked against her ribs. Sometimes. Would you have liked me? She turned to look at him. Really look at him. At some point over the past few weeks, she'd stopped seeing the arrogant billionaire and started seeing just Adrian. The man who made her coffee in the mornings. Who asked about her day. Who had nightmares and fears and dreams like everyone else. I like you now, she said quietly. Adrian's breath caught. Zara, I know we said it was a mistake. I know we're supposed to be keeping our distance. But I can't stop thinking about. She couldn't finish. Couldn't say it out loud. Me either. Adrian set the wine bottle down, his full attention on her now. Every day I tell myself to stay away from you. Every night I lie in bed and remember what it felt like to kiss you. To touch you. Adrian, she whispered. Tell me to stop. Tell me you don't feel this too, and I'll go back to my room and we'll never talk about it again. Zara knew this was a cliff edge. Knew that if she stepped off, there was no going back. But she was tired of pretending. Tired of fighting something that felt inevitable. I can't, she said. Because I do feel it. I feel it every time you look at me. Every time we're in the same room. And I'm tired of lying about it. Adrian's eyes darkened. What are you saying? I'm saying screw the rules. Screw being professional. Zara moved closer, closing the distance between them. I'm saying I want you, and I think you want me too, and maybe we should stop fighting it. For a moment, Adrian just stared at her. Then he cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle despite the hunger in his eyes. If we do this, he said slowly, everything changes. I know. We could ruin what we have. Or we could make it better. Adrian's thumb traced her bottom lip, and Zara's breath hitched. You're sure? Are you? Instead of answering, he kissed her. This kiss was different from the first. There was no hesitation, no holding back. It was pure need, pure want, weeks of tension finally breaking free. Zara kissed him back with everything she had, her hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. Adrian lifted her easily, and she wrapped her legs around his waist as he carried her down the hallway. They didn't make it to a bedroom. Halfway there, Adrian pressed her against the wall, his mouth on her neck, her collarbone, everywhere he could reach. Adrian, Zara gasped, her head falling back. Please, tell me what you want. You. I want you. He carried her the rest of the way to his room, kicking the door closed behind them. They fell onto the bed together, and this time, there was no stopping. No pulling back. Adrian's hands were everywhere, learning the geography of her body with focused intensity. He pulled her shirt over her head, his eyes dark with appreciation as he took her in. Beautiful, he murmured, and the reverence in his voice made her ache. Zara tugged at his shirt, and he helped her remove it, revealing the body she'd been trying not to think about for weeks. She ran her hands over his chest, his abs, feeling the muscles flex under her touch. Your turn to tell me what you want, she said. Adrian's smile was wicked. Everything. He proved it with his mouth, his hands, his entire attention focused on her pleasure. He kissed down her body, learning what made her gasp, what made her arch into him, what made her moan his name. When he finally removed the rest of her clothes, Zara was trembling with need. Adrian, please. Patience, he said, but his voice was strained. He was holding on to control by a thread. His mouth found her breast, tongue circling her nipple until she was writhing beneath him. His hand slid down her stomach, lower, and when he touched her, Zara cried out. So wet, he groaned against her skin. Is this all for me? Yes, she gasped. God, yes. He worked her with his fingers, his mouth on her breast, watching her face as he brought her higher and higher. Zara clutched at his shoulders, his back, anything she could reach, pleasure building inside her like a storm. I want to taste you, Adrian said, his voice rough with desire. Before Zara could respond, he was moving down her body, settling between her thighs. When his mouth touched her, she nearly came apart right there. Oh God! He was thorough, merciless, using his tongue and lips and fingers to take her apart piece by piece. Zara's hands fisted in his hair, holding him to her as pleasure crashed over her in waves. She came with his name on her lips, her entire body shaking. Adrian kissed his way back up her body, and Zara could taste herself on his lips when he kissed her. She reached between them, finding him hard and ready, and his groan of pleasure vibrated against her mouth. I need you, she said. Now. Condom. Adrian reached for his nightstand, fumbling with the drawer. His hands were shaking slightly, and something about that, about knowing she affected him this much, sent another wave of desire through Zara. She helped him roll it on, her hands deliberately slow, teasing. Adrian's jaw clenched with the effort of restraint. You're killing me. Good. He positioned himself at her entrance, eyes locked on hers. Last chance to change your mind. Not a chance. He entered her in one smooth thrust, and they both groaned at the sensation. Adrian stilled, giving her time to adjust, his forehead pressed against hers. Okay, he asked. More than okay. Move. He did, setting a rhythm that had them both gasping. Zara wrapped her legs around his waist, taking him deeper, and Adrian's control shattered. He drove into her harder, faster, one hand gripping her hip, the other braced beside her head. Yes, Zara moaned. Just like that. Don't stop. Wasn't planning to. The room filled with the sounds of their pleasure. Skin against skin, breathless moans, whispered names. Zara felt herself climbing again, that familiar tension building low in her belly. Touch yourself, Adrian commanded, his voice rough. I want to feel you come around me. Zara obeyed, her hands sliding between their bodies. The combination of him inside her and her own touch was overwhelming. She came with a cry, her inner walls clenching around him. Adrian followed seconds later, burying himself deep as he found his release, Zara's name a prayer on his lips. They collapsed together, both breathing hard, sweat slicked and satisfied. Adrian pulled out carefully, disposed of the condom, and then pulled Zara into his arms. For a long moment, they just lay there, tangled together, hearts slowly returning to normal rhythm. So, Zara said finally, her voice slightly hoarse. That happened. Adrian laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. Best mistake we ever made? Definitely. She propped herself up on her elbow, looking down at him. What does this mean? For us? Adrian's expression grew serious. He reached up and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I don't know, but I know I don't want it to be just once. Me either. So we figure it out. Together. He pulled her back down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. No more avoiding each other. No more pretending we don't feel this. What about when your life goes back to normal? When you get your company back and move out? Adrian was quiet for a moment. Let's deal with tomorrow when it comes. For now, let's just be here. Together. Zara nodded, settling into his embrace. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. But inside their small apartment, wrapped in each other's arms, time felt suspended. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it. Together. For now, that was enough. Living with Adrian after sleeping together should have been awkward. Should have been complicated. Instead, it was revelation. They fell into a new rhythm, one that included stolen kisses in the kitchen, Adrian's hands on her waist as she cooked dinner, Zara sitting in his lap while he worked on his laptop. The apartment that had felt cramped with their careful distance now felt intimate with their closeness. They talked. Really talked. Not just surface conversation, but deep, meaningful exchanges that lasted until 3 a.m. Zara learned that Adrian had built his company from nothing, that he'd grown up poor and hungry and determined to never be either again. That his drive for success wasn't about the money. It was about proving he was worth something. That his worst fear wasn't losing his fortune, but losing himself in the process. Adrian learned that Zara's event planning wasn't just a job. It was her way of creating the family she'd lost. Every wedding she planned, she imagined her parents renewing their vows. Every birthday party reminded her of celebrations with her grandmother. She poured love into other people's moments because her own had been cut short. They learned each other's bodies with the same thoroughness. Adrian discovered that Zara was ticklish behind her knees, that she made this small gasping sound when he kissed her neck just right, that she looked absolutely gorgeous when she came undone beneath him. Zara learned that Adrian liked it when she took control, that he had a surprisingly sensitive spot on his lower back, that he loved watching her pleasure herself for him, that his dirty talk could make her wet with just a few words. Their physical relationship was intense, all-consuming. They made love in every room of the apartment, on the couch during a thunderstorm, in the shower where it had all started going wrong, or right, depending on perspective, against the kitchen counter at midnight when neither could sleep. But it was more than just sex. It was the way Adrian left her favorite tea on the counter in the mornings. The way Zara massaged his shoulders when he'd been working too long. The way they fit together, like two puzzle pieces that had been searching for each other all along. Everything was perfect, which should have been Zara's first warning. The call came on a Wednesday morning. Zara was at a venue consultation when her phone rang with an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Zara Adelik? Yes, who's this? My name is David Chen. I'm a private investigator working for Adrian Okonkwo. Zara's stomach dropped. I'm sorry, what? I need to meet with you. It's about the apartment you're living in and some irregularities in Mr. Okonkwo's case. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I don't understand. What irregularities? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Every instinct told Zara something was wrong. Very wrong. But she agreed to meet him at 3 p.m. The rest of her consultation was a blur. She smiled, took notes, promised the bride everything would be perfect, but her mind was miles away. Why would a private investigator want to talk to her? What irregularities? And more importantly, why didn't she know Adrian had hired an investigator? She showed up at David Chen's office 15 minutes early, her nerves frayed. The investigator was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a serious expression. He gestured for her to sit. "Thank you for coming, Miss Adelik. I'll get straight to the point. I've been investigating Adrian Okonkwo's case, the embezzlement and fraud allegations. I know about that. Did you know that the apartment you're living in was legitimately purchased by Mr. Okonkwo 5 years ago as an investment property?" Zara frowned. "Yes, he told me that. So what's the problem?" David leaned forward. "The problem is what happened after. When Marcus was executing his plan to destroy Mr. Okonkwo, he gained access to Adrian's property records. He discovered this forgotten apartment and saw an opportunity. Marcus created a fake property management company, forged leasing documents, and specifically targeted you to rent the place." "Me specifically? But why would?" "Because you're not just a random tenant who was scammed. You're Marcus Chen's cousin." The world stopped. "That's impossible," Zara whispered. "My family name is Adelik. I don't have any cousins named Chun. Your mother's maiden name was Chun. She had a brother, your uncle, who moved overseas 30 years ago and changed his surname. He had a son, Marcus." David slid a folder across the desk. "It's all here. Birth certificates, family records, everything.